Google, Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, WordPress, FedEx, Time Magazine. What do these companies have in common? You can pause the video right now, put your comment down there, and let's see if you really got it. So are you ready? Drum roll. Here we go. All these companies were started by students while they were studying in the university. These 7 companies are part of so many more companies around the world that have gone global, that are shaping and framing the world as we know it, as we experience it today, that started with young people in a university, college, tertiary institution environment, talking to each other. Maybe they were bored, coming up with something for fun, maybe a little bit more nefarious or, selfish reasons. But they came up with these ideas, worked on them together, and they became global giants. And why is that relevant to Naive Nigerian? In case you're joining us for the first time, Naive Nigerian is the community of people who are naive enough to believe that simple, practical, implementable ideas can be put together and can be implemented in Nigeria to turn the direction of the country around or to drastically improve outcomes on different aspects of our lives. You have heard many people say it's more complicated, it's so nuanced, this stuff is going to take forever. And you see many people jaded. They're so overwhelmed with the appearance of the multiple layers of complexities that make it almost impossible to ever make any meaningful change in Nigeria. Here at Naive Nigerian, we say no. We can break it into simple bits, we can define it, and we can use existing structures, resources, people, without even needing $100 billion that we don't know when we're going to get it, but using what we have here now today to get drastically better outcomes. So back to the conversation. Why are we talking about Facebook? Are we talking about Reddit and all of these global organizations that started in a university environment? Everybody knows in the world that one of the places where you find the largest concentration of energy, ideas, where there is relentless and tireless flow of passion is in our universities, polytechnics, universities, colleges of education, technical colleges, everywhere where you have a high concentration of young people who are just getting through the teenage years and they're getting into some of their most creative periods of their life. And when you look at music and art, if we could segue just for a few seconds, some of the most remarkable masterpieces that we talk about till today were done by people in their late teens and in their 20s. It is such a period of huge potential, and we don't want to sit down with the word potential. We want to transform it into real life results. And so the question is, do we have the environment today in Nigerian universities and other tertiary institutions that can foster that collaboration amongst young people who are relentless, who are tireless, who have ideas, who just want to burst out with all of this huge ideas, and they want to experiment, they want to implement, and they want to try these ideas that they have? Do our tertiary institutions create the environment for these young people to have time to work together and to create some of these ideas? Just imagine for a second that maybe one of the companies I mentioned or other ones that were started in college never came to be. These ideas remained possible, but without the right environment, you could never have them see the light of day. It makes you and I think for a second of all of the possibilities, the massive global companies, organizations, ideas, startups that could have been perfectly cradled, that could have been perfectly nurtured in our tertiary institutions and that could have become global champions today. In spite of the current situation as we have it, shout out to many other Nigerian companies that are doing really well around the world. Some of them were started in college, as we're describing, in universities and other tertiary institutions. Others were started outside of those walls by people who knew each other in college, in universities, in other tertiary institutions, and by other people who met after that. And we celebrate that. The conversation today is how we could turbocharge this creative possibility while so many young people with this energy and this ability are together. And that takes us to what we have in the Nigerian tertiary institutions today. When I was a student in a Nigerian university, we had timetable, a schedule of our classes that were pretty much scattered all over the map. And so we could have our first class in the morning at 8 in the morning and maybe it finishes at 9:30. And we would have a break not because it's designed to be a break, just because there's no other class after the 9:30. And from 9:30 to 10 or to 11 or to 12, there might not be a class. And then after that, there's another class from 12 to 1:30 and another one starts at 3. And at the end of the day, you're going back home maybe 5 p.m., maybe 4 p.m., depending on the day, sometimes 6 p.m. We had a particular course, I remember, that you had to come back and you started that class at 5 and you finished at 6:30. We were one of the last people leaving the university premises at the time. That setup does not provide room and space for young people already in that university or in that tertiary institution to be able to disconnect from the day-to-day of the classes, to work together, to build a social rapport, to discuss their passions, and to potentially come up with these ideas like the companies that we've talked about. We're not talking about every single idea becoming a global winner, because you don't have to be a Facebook or a FedEx to be able to make a difference in your own life, in the life of Nigeria as a country, or in your state, or in your city, or in your town. There is a huge space for opportunities, huge amount of opportunities for all of these ideas to morph into very relevant, important, economically viable and relevant outputs for our country. And so if somebody has to travel to school, maybe they live an hour away from school, maybe they live 40 minutes away from school, and their first class finishes at 10 in the morning and they do not have another class until 11, it doesn't make sense to travel back home for an hour, because by the time they get home, it's already time for the next class. And so you have young people, energetic people, just mostly walking around. They're not able to sit down and concentrate and have rapport. They're mostly trying to make sure they know where the next venue is of the next class, and it's extremely superficial. The conversations are not deep because you're constantly thinking you have another class that you have to catch up with. And here is the simple idea that we as a community of naive Nigerians are putting forward. How about we create a structure for our classes in our tertiary institutions that do not have these gaps that will potentially waste the entire day of these young people and literally steal away all of the space and time they could have had to develop themselves in other areas. So here is a practical, simple suggestion. If we had a class structure where whenever you come into the university or the tertiary institution, every semester you will know if you're in the early morning class schedule or you're in the later afternoon class schedule. By the way, this idea is not original to me. It's been done in other parts of the world, but we're bringing it to the table and we're challenging ourselves as Nigerians to put this to work and see what the possibilities are. So the morning schedule means you have your first class 7:30 to 10 in the morning, your second class 10 to 11:30 in the morning, and then you have a break from 11:30 to 12, and then you have your third class, which will be the last class of the day, from 12 to 1:30. All of the people who are in the morning schedule leave the classes, the halls, the facilities, the premises. They move out of those classes. And people who are on the afternoon schedule, they come on and they start their class at 1:30 when the morning schedule students are finished. They go from 1:30 to 3 for their first class, 3 o'clock to 4:30 p.m. for their second class. They have a break from 4:30 to 5 p.m. and they have their last class, the third and the last class for the day, from 5 to 6:30. So here we are with two schedules, and I can tell as a student coming into the university for that semester, and the semester is about 3 months. For that semester, I know that for the next 3 months, I will be able to have every day of school free from 1:30 p.m. for the rest of the day if I'm in the morning schedule. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, some schools have classes on Saturdays. Monday to Saturday, I'm free from 1:30 p.m. every day for the rest of the day. And if I'm on the afternoon schedule, I know that I am free all morning till 1:30 p.m. through my class days. What does this do? First and foremost, we optimize the classes that the students have, because they have their classes in a very valuable consecutive structure. It helps everyone, from the lecturers to the school to the planning to the students as well. But secondly, and where it really begins to add real value to our country, is that young people are able to develop other aspects of their lives that would serve them in the workplace, in building their own business, in learning, relating with other people and the outside world. And that's where the possibilities that we started this conversation with begin to crop up. If I, for example, know that from 1:30 p.m. every day I'm free, including the weekends, then it means I could take on a job if I wanted. If there was a job opportunity where I could work and work in a shift environment where I could work in the afternoons, I could do that. I could support myself in school. I could support my parents financially. That is a huge army of a productive population that we will be unleashing on the Nigerian economy. University students can be builders. They can work in restaurants. They can work in stores. They could even work in professional environments in intern capacities. They could be freelancers in different environments. And that possibility is huge. I had the opportunity to freelance for the media station of the state where I worked. And that was because I had some skills in broadcasting, informal and professional as well. And I took that opportunity. It was difficult for me to juggle both that with my academic work because the schedule in school was not predictable. It was all over the place. And I needed to do this. It was something that I was passionate about, and I had other goals that I needed to meet, and that made me do it in spite of the challenges. But imagine if there were 100 or 200 people like me who did not have to deal with that academic structure as an obstacle in order to unleash other parts of their lives that they could find. In the process of doing that freelance work in the broadcast station, I met other people that I would never have met otherwise. People that opened my eyes and caused my brain to think through new pathways. Experiences that I would never have had in the university environment with other young people that otherwise. That's one possibility. Another possibility is young students forming groups, associations, learning the power and the leverage that exists in coming together and leveraging that power of association for possibilities. I know, for example, in my school, there was a group at the time that was into tourism. They would come together, put their funds together, and they'll visit beautiful places in Nigeria like the Erinjesha Waterfalls, the Yankari Games Reserve, and other places. But it was difficult even for them to make it happen because of the academic schedule. Some people had to miss classes, outright miss classes, because they wanted to be able to do that. There were other people who wanted to be able to explore deep things, their spiritual life, devote more time and dig deep into the spiritual work, depending on what your faith was. But people could not do that. Sometimes they had to pick between two things, but the opportunity could be there to be able to study, give attention to your education, but also explore that. And so it could be employment outside school, it could be building association, it could be exploring deep faith and spirituality, it could be discussing ideas, technological ideas, business ideas. It could be exploring opening a business. I had a classmate in the university who had a business just outside school. He had a printing business and some computer services business, but even it was difficult. But if we had this structure that made it clear for every student over the next 3 months what was going to happen, they could effectively, to great effect and results, not just for themselves, not just for the university, but to the community, to the state, and to Nigeria as a whole. We could unleash a huge torrent of ideas, of businesses, of employment, of possibilities that could impact our country today. And 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line, we could perhaps be talking about some FedEx level idea, some Facebook level idea, some Google level innovation that will begin to come out of Nigerian tertiary institutions. If you have some thoughts on this, join me in the comments there, put your thoughts in there. Let's discuss this idea. How quickly can we implement this? Because it always comes back to that question. Do we need to bring $100 billion to make this happen? We have our universities, we have our colleges, we have our polytechnics, we have students already in these places, we have classrooms. Yes, there are challenges, things can be better, but using what we have with the devotion and commitment of our teaching staff, of the university administration, of the students' unions and the student body themselves, there is a possibility in a short to medium term to come up with these schedules that would optimize our lecture halls, our classes, and allow the university, even from a commercial standpoint, to potentially double their capacity because of the optimization of the lecturing schedules. And if we implement that idea, that could move Nigeria just one more step to becoming that place where great things happen, not in 50 years, but in 6 months, in 2 years, and maybe in 3 years. Let me hear what you're thinking about this. Put your comments in there wherever you're listening or watching this. Put your comments down there. I will be looking, I'll be engaging with you so we can take this conversation forward.